It's noon. Sun is high, straight up in the sky. It's hot. And a woman walks to the well alone. Because women in Jesus' time didn't go to the well at noon. They went in the morning with groups of friends and family when it was cool. But the point is they went together. But this woman went alone at the worst time of day, which tells us everything about her and her life. Which tells us everything about her and what her life had become. And sitting at that well, tired from having traveled all morning, is Jesus. What happens next is one of the longest one-on-one conversations that is recorded of Jesus having with another person. And he has it with her. Jesus is traveling from Judea to Galilee, and he has to pass through Samaria. Jews and Samaritans at the time had a mutual hatred of each other. And most Jewish travelers, because passing through could be dangerous, but they also felt that they were unclean, would travel the long way around just to avoid setting foot on Samaritan soil. Interesting enough, John records that Jesus says that he must go through Samaria. That word is so deliberate. This wasn't about geography. It wasn't about saving time. It was a divine appointment. So Jesus sits down at this well, Jacob's well, outside the Samaritan town that we call Sychar. And his disciples have gone into town to get food, and he's left alone. The Samaritan woman shows up to get water from the well, and Jesus says to her, "Will you give me a drink?" And she stops because 3 rules, societal and religious rules, were broken right then. He's Jewish, she's Samaritan, she's a woman, he's a man, he's a rabbi, and she is, well, her. And Jesus says something that stops the whole conversation and changes changes her life. He says, if you knew who was asking you for water, you'd be asking him, and he would be giving you living water. And rightfully so, she doesn't understand this, but she says, you don't even have a bucket. This well is deep. Where are you going to get this living water? And Jesus tells her that everyone who drinks from this well will be thirsty again. But the water I give, it becomes a spring inside of you, welling up an eternal life. And of course, she says, give me that water, because she's thinking physically. She's thinking, give me that water so I never have to come here again. I never have to come here by myself in the hottest part of the day, alone, in shame, maybe guilty, rejected, outcast again. And then Jesus says something unexpected. He says, go get your husband and come back. She says, I have no husband. And Jesus says, you're right. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're with now is not your husband. But I think if we were there, I don't think we would have heard judgment in his voice. Unlike us, we probably would have put some bitterness or some judgment into that conversation. But Jesus doesn't say this with judgment. He just says it with truth. He just tells her the truth. He sees her completely, and he's still sitting there. She realizes that only a prophet could know that stuff about her. So she asks this question, I believe, as kind of a way to shift the conversation away from her, to kind of not go down that path that Jesus is trying to lead her to. So she asks this question that her folks, her religion, has been battling and discussing for generations. And that question is, where is the right place to worship God? Because the Samaritans thought it was on one mountain, and the Israelites thought it was in the temple. But Jesus tells her, don't worry about that kind of stuff, because the time is coming. Actually, it's here now, when true worship won't be on a mountain or in a city. It will be about spirit and truth. And so worship will be in spirit and in truth. She says, I know the Messiah is coming, and when he comes, he'll explain everything. And Jesus says simply, I who speak to you am he. Or you could say, I am. There's a few details, a few things I want to point out that are easy to miss in this story, and then kind of miss what this story is really about. Because it's in the Bible for a reason. First, the woman's isolation was not by choice. 5 marriages in that culture likely meant that she was divorced or widowed 5 times. Divorce in the first century came from the man, often for the most minor reasons, like, I don't like your cooking. So the idea is that she didn't collect 5 husbands and divorces out of rebellion because she couldn't have asked for the divorce. She'd been discarded, thrown out, for whatever reason, repeatedly. She went to the well alone at noon because the other women whose lives didn't take the same path as this lady's made the trip unbearable for her. She was an outcast. She was a Samaritan woman, divorced 5 times, in a world that looked down at people just for being Samaritans. And she was a woman that even Samaritans didn't want around. But Jesus went out of his way to find her. He had to go through Samaria. Second is the idea of living water. So in Hebrew and Jewish tradition, living water meant fresh, flowing water, river, stream, spring, as opposed to the stagnant cistern water. And I don't know if you've ever drank water out of a hot canteen cup or a hot canteen. Imagine water sitting in a clay pot and getting hot in the sun. Been there for a couple days. See the difference? So in this case, living water is a metaphor for the presence and the Spirit of God. Jesus is telling her that he is the source of the thing that she's been looking for, the thing that she was searching for in all those relationships with all those husbands and all that shame. That wasn't judgment, it was an offer. And third, Jesus tells this woman something that he almost has never said out loud to anyone yet. When she mentions the Messiah, he doesn't deflect this time. And he doesn't deflect for her. He doesn't speak in parables. He doesn't change the subject. He says it plainly. I am he. And this is the first person, at least in John's gospel, to receive that direct declaration from Jesus of who Jesus really is. And here's the point that I think is the most important part of this story. Jesus didn't wait for this woman to clean herself up. He didn't wait for her to have the right theology or right history or the right questions or say the right things or do the right thing. He sat down at a well in the middle of the day and he started a conversation with someone that no one else wanted to talk to. And of course, he knew everything about her before he even said a word. But that's the thing about living water. You don't earn it. You don't qualify for it. You just have to be thirsty enough to ask. And she was. And he gave it. Have you ever felt you've disqualified yourself from being a follower of Jesus? From having a relationship with God? Have you ever felt disqualified to be part of community? To have a clean start? Well, think about this story. Jesus went out of his way for her. He goes out of his way for you too. So may we go this week remembering that Jesus can give us the living water that we thirst for, but also that Jesus goes out of his way for us. Grace and peace to you. God bless you. Have a great week.